As a coach, you try to imagine how the match will go in your head, but it doesn't always play out that way. We know we'll be up against a team with the highest possession rate in Europe and a very technical side. We lead our own league in possession and are among the best in Europe too. We'll need to be good from a technical perspective and pass the ball well to limit PSG's time on it because they're a very strong team, both in possession and other aspects. Well, with us this afternoon to preview this tantalizing matchup, our football correspondent, Juan G. Arango. Good afternoon, Juan. Champions League final. Can you believe it's here? Because you've been a part of our Champions League broadcast team. We're up on the final and we have two mouth-watering teams. What can we expect?
It's funny that you say that because it seems like we were just getting ready for the final between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund just a year ago.
Yes.
So time does have fun. Time does go fast when you're having fun. You hear a lot about some of the facets of play that are emphasized by one team and the other. But what needs to be emphasized in this final is what is the other team going to do to neutralize it. I think that's where you need to start focusing on this more, or we need to start focusing on it more, because it ends up being that type of facet or that type of quality that ends up making a difference in a one-off type of championship game.
Yeah, for sure, Juan. And, there are so many ways to look at this game, right? And I think I'm going to start by asking you about the tactics. Which of the team will be superior tactically? And, we're trying to get into the minds of these managers.
And that's a good question, because both teams, as different as they are in their respective styles, at the end of the day, they have, with transition, with exploiting spaces, that's basically the forte of Inter, of trying to see where that space ends up being created. They go and attack it. They go and attack it wide. They try and create a lot down the wings. And both teams have very good, high-quality scorers inside of the area. Of course, on one end, you have someone like Ousmane Dembélé for PSG, and then you have Lautaro Martinez and Marcos Thuram for Inter. So it ends up being one of those situations of, okay, how do you do to try and neutralize it once again? How do you do to try and limit their opportunities? And I think that's where we have to start looking at it. And in that facet, I would start slightly nudging in the direction of PSG.
Yeah, I want to keep the discussion on Champions League, but I have to ask you this, as you mentioned, Ousmane Dembélé, because he's in the conversation for the Ballon d'Or one. And now the conversation is, if he wins this Champions League with PSG, does he overtake my player, Lamine Yamal? Does he?
Maybe. You talk about your player, Lamine Yamal. There was one, I was listening to Gary Lineker just a little while ago. He's talking about, what if Gigi Donnarumma ends up having a good match? Does he end up being considered for the Ballon d'Or?
Yeah.
So I mean, you have all these other I guess, equations that can come into play in arguably one of the most wide open Ballon d'Or conversations, because we could probably come up with 2 or 3 candidates right now.
All right, so we're not going to just rest it on the Champions League, but it will be exciting to see how Ousmane Dembélé goes about this Champions League. Another player I want to talk about, Inter's Denzel Dumfries, and how he has gone about his campaign and how much of an asset he'll be for this Inter team.
Well, when he hasn't been on the pitch, Inter haven't been as effective. That's basically what it comes down to, especially down his wing. He with Barcelona, in the Barcelona tie, I shouldn't say in the match against Barcelona, because he was dominant in both legs. He ends up becoming a very integral part of their set-piece play, coming in and scoring on multiple occasions, being that threat inside of the area. But it's not just that. It's how he defends out wide. It's how he ends up being part of that block that ends up kind of closing things down for the opposition. At this point in this competition, he's become invaluable for Inter.
Yeah, Juan, most of the bookmakers that I've looked at have listed PSG as slight favorites for this match. Is that an illustration of how tight this match could be, and what are the pluses and minuses for both teams as far as you're concerned?
Well, let me break that. I mean, I agree with what there's. I mean, it's a slight, very slight advantage as far as the bookies are concerned. How they're putting PSG over Inter right now. Recent form in Champions League has been favoring PSG a little bit more. The way that they were able to take care of business locally, the only match that has been competitive. Now, here's where the positive ends up spinning probably in the direction of Inter. The only competitive match that PSG's had in recent weeks outside of Champions League was the final of the French Cup against Tarim. And that's where you end up saying, well, they handle them pretty easily. And you end up saying, well, is that enough? Is that enough to really convince an argument? That's the big question. And right now, that's probably not it. In terms of Inter, a team that's maybe a little bit fresher because they've been competitive. They've had to not only play Coppa Italia while they were playing Champions League, they also were in the fight for win. At one point in that final round in the Serie A, they were winning the Scudetto until Napoli scored the first goal of the match and basically was done. But they've been competing on all cylinders for, basically a good portion of the season. So maybe that gives a little bit more of an edge to Inter. We'll see.
Yeah. Towards the home stretch in the Champions League, Lautaro Martinez had not been 100% fit. Is he 100% fit now? And obviously, he's one of the key players that could decide this fixture.
I don't know if he's 100%. For that matter, I don't know if anyone is 100% fit at this stage of the season. But he is as close to 100% as he's going to be. And yes, you're right. He is that player that many are looking at. That is he going to be that player that scores the only goal of the match? Is he that player that many are going to be depending upon to make the difference? Absolutely, yes. And by the way, we forgot to mention his name too, Mariah, in terms of the Ballon d'Or candidates. He's also one that needs to be mentioned because of what he's been able to do at Inter in every single competition this year.
Yeah.
Can you speak briefly too about the quality of Luis Enrique's coaching this season? He's done a wonderful job for sure, and he's looking to join just a handful of coaches who have won the Champions League with two different clubs, coaches like Jose Mourinho and Carlo Ancelotti. How good has he been this year?
Well, I mean, if you only talk about this year, maybe it's an injustice to what he's been able to do since he arrived at PSG. And I say that because what he's been, it's been a work in progress since last season, since everything that we saw in that documentary when him talking about Kylian Mbappé trying to be like Michael Jordan, and what he has been able to instill in the confidence of a project that he had a lot to do with this turnaround at PSG of, well, you know what, we can get rid of the superstars and start setting up a team. He wanted that, although he would have not minded having any of the superstars that left. He wanted to have a team. He wanted to have a concept where the team is above everything else and not one single player. That's first and foremost. That's the bedrock. That's the foundation of what he's been capable of doing. Second of all, he's been able to instill a system where everyone participates, everyone moves well, everyone also moves well, taking a half of a phrase there from Simone Inzaghi. And it's a team that you have a variety of options on the attack, and you have a team that's willing to sacrifice and suffer. So you have everything that a Luis Enrique team has been known for, but also a team that does have a great deal of verticality.
Yeah, well, I said this year because I recognize that this year has been a culmination one of
Absolutely.
the work that he's been doing, and it sort of would put the icing on the cake if he wins this one because of the work that he has done with growing this team to this level.
And it also adds, rarely, I mean, when you have these coaching conversations, Lance, and I'm guilty of it too. A lot of times we rattle off Ancelotti, Guardiola, one time Mourinho, Jurgen Klopp, whoever. We don't really, out of the tip of our tongue, we immediately don't mention Luis Enrique and what he's been capable of doing with Barcelona, what he was able to do to a certain extent with Spain, because we see he was a byproduct of a lot of things that Luis de la Fuente is also benefiting from. You also have to start adding him, but maybe he needs to be consolidated outside of that whole Barcelona spectrum. And maybe this PSG thing might be the antidote for that.
Yeah, I'll never understand how PSG performed a lot better without top three players, how they were able to reinvent themselves. But I'm here for it. One, I guess it just means you don't really need stars to win titles. You just need a proper system. So good luck, Champions League on the weekend. We'll be tuning in as well, and I can't wait to see who walks away with that title this year. Juan J. Arango, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
All right, take care.
All right, up on a break. I'll be up with Zone Update 2 next.